Hello, in this quick guide video, we'll discuss about entity framework. Our approach will be code first. We'll set up our database and a table. Lastly, we'll decorate the table using data annotation. Hi, my name is Eugene, and my mission is to spread lifelong learning. I've been into programming for more than 10 years, but now, more than ever, there are more things to learn. Join me as we explore .NET technologies. There are plans to include other topics like React and other stuff, so please comment below for topics you would like to be included. As a prerequisite for this video, I'm going to assume that you have VS Code and SQL Server installed in your machine. We'll set up the application using the command prompt. So first we'll make the directory customer management. Then we'll go inside the folder and create two projects. So we'll create an API project, .NET New Web API, enable the API, then we create a library project, class library. And we'll create a solution. And then we'll connect the solution with the API and the class library. Lastly, we'll reference the API to the data layer. So once you open your folder inside Visual Studio Code, you should see this structure. In the data, we'll create a entity folder. And then inside the entity folder, we'll create a new class. We call it customer. Then inside the customer class, we'll add few properties. Prop and ID prop string first name string last name string gender email date time birthday. So we just don't need to import using system. So because we don't want our class to look the same as the one we're going to save in the database, we'll add some data annotation. First, we'll determine the table name. The customer. So control that to add the using statement. Then we'll mark the first name as required. And then also determine the column name. First underscore name. And we want to determine also the data type. For string, this is very important because the default will be a much bigger data type. So this is a must. We get also the data annotation. Okay. Last name will be also required in the system. So determine the column name also. Varchar 100. For the gender, we just need the data type. So column type varchar 50. Email, you can just copy this. This is 100 and this is 50. Then we want to rename this date of birth, birthday. So this depends mostly on your coding, your standard for database column naming and table naming. We will also like to put this as optional. So this is it for the data annotation. So after creating our customer class, we'll create the data context class. But before we do that, we need to add a NuGet. So we click Ctrl Shift P, open NuGet gallery. We need to add Microsoft entity framework core .sql server. Okay, we will install this in the data project. Okay, it's done. Just press any key. So we'll now proceed creating the data context class. So here in data, add a new class, data context. So we just update the namespace to data. And then this should inherit to DBContext. Should be able to get the using statement. Okay. Then we create a constructor. This constructor will have a parameter of DBContext option. And this should pass into base, which is the DBContext, pass the option. Then we can add the dbset. So prop, change this to dbset of customer, which we will call customers. Then we can add reference to data entity. Okay. Now let's proceed to the API layer, and this time we'll install the entity framework core design. Open NuGet gallery again. Microsoft entity framework core design. Okay. Installing the API layer. Okay. Done. So after we install our NuGet, we can also go to the upsetting.json to add a connection string. So connection strings, default connection now. So you can get the server name. If you open your SQL, then you try to connect, so that will appear. Server equals local db backslash double backslash local db semicolon the database, we name it customer db, then integrated security, security equals true. Sorry about that. Okay. So now that we have the connection string, we go to start app to add the service. We go to configure service, services, AddDbContext. We pass in the data context we created earlier. Okay. And then we import the using statement. And then we pass in parameter option goes to option that use SQL server. Configuration that get connection string, default connection. Close this, and then also here, and then we add in using Microsoft Entity Framework Core. To perform migration with Entity Framework Core, you need to install the Entity Framework Core tools. So in this website, which I will provide below, you just run this command in your command prompt. So in command prompt, simply run the command. You should install the tools. Okay, to verify installation, .NET tool list global. Okay, you can see that it's now installed. So our next step is to do the migration. Since we're already inside Visual Studio Code, then we can just click Ctrl tilde to open the terminal. and then we type in the migration command .NET EF migrations add, so we will name it initial migration dash P, which is the data, dash S, which is the starting application, the API. Okay, so the build is starting. You should see here a migration folder, the data. Okay, so migrations folder is now created. So there will be two parts. This will be where the script is. So you can see the table name, the fields, the name, and the data type. And there will be an up and a down statement. So down is to roll back changes. This is just the designer. Okay, now we have the script ready. We can run it. So we .NET EF database update dash P data dash S API. Okay. So apparently we had an issue because the database is already existing because I tested that previously. So I'll run again now that I have deleted those, the table and the database. Okay, it's done. We'll validate in the SQL. So now in SQL Server, you can run sp underscore help, then t customer. To see the table definition. So now you can see that this is the primary key. The ID is a primary key, first name and last name. The naming convention change with the underscore. And then we also have varchar data type with the length, proper length, date time, which is nullable. So to summarize, to implement Entity Framework Core code first to your application, you must do the following. First is to set up your application, create the proper projects and the folders. Then create your entity model, which you will house the tables and the properties. Then add data annotation. This is an important part because this will define the size of your varchar, if the field is required, and if you don't put the size of your varchar, it will be very huge. Okay. Next is to install Entity Framework Core SQL Server NuGet in your data layer. Then create a data context and add the DB set, which will be your entity model. After that, you install the Entity Framework Core Design NuGet in the startup layer. You can now then add the connection string and then add a service, which is the AddDbContext. Then to migrate, to implement the migration, you need to install .NET EF tool. Then you can run add migration and update database. So after this, you can verify if your table was created in your SQL table. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. If you learned something, please hit the like button or consider subscribing to see the future updates. Thank you and good day.